The following is an original A Livin' podcast.
Well, guys, this is a very, very unusual scene that you guys are witnessing right now. I am going it alone. This is the first and hopefully only episode that I'm taking on reviewing the Daytona 500 and also some other stories and previewing Fontana. Basically, the whole spiel of doing a GTN episode by myself. The reason as to why I'm doing this by myself was because Wyatt himself right now is going through a lot. Some stuff happened behind the scenes, and he personally, in my opinion, is not able to bring himself to do this. He really didn't want to. A lot of what was happening was weighing him down. So he gets tonight off. Nathan Stapleton, on the other hand, was 50-50 on wanting to be a part of this, and he chose not to be a part of this. For whatever reason, I don't know. He probably could be busy with something else. He probably just was not feeling it today. At the time that I'm recording this on February 20th. But nonetheless, I'm not going to repeat history, just like of how the Pit Stop show died. I'm not going to cancel the show because nobody showed up. I'm not going to cancel the show because Stapleton decided not to be here. I'm not going to cancel the show because Wyatt's going through a lot and he chose not to be here. I'm going to continue on with the show. I'm going to keep going with basically what we've got going on here. I'm passionate about GTN. I like the direction that we're going here. And I want to keep going down this direction. And I want to keep the show alive. So that way I can provide this show. So that way this show can be broadcasted out, not just on here on YouTube, but also on Spotify for everybody to watch and or listen to. Whether it be the actual show on YouTube or the Spotify audio replays. So, thank you guys a lot for being here, and let's go ahead and get on down to it. So, starting off with the truck series. So, my honest opinion about the truck race is that if it had gone at least 21 more laps, if we had no rain delay, it probably would have played out the same way that it did last year. But from what I've seen from the highlights, the racing itself was honestly really good. Of course, big shout out to somebody like Haley Deegan, for instance. Deegan was up towards the front the whole entire stage 1. She ended up getting some stage points, but unfortunately, right around lap 27 when she was caught up in a big wreck. And I hate that it happened, but I'm also hating of how I chose her as the driver to stay away from because I foresaw something like this happening. I didn't think it would happen this early in the race. So red flag comes out for having to do a track cleanup. Also a little bit of there were also some sprinkles in the area, but we got back to racing. We're racing another 50 laps, and hey, of all people that were out front, it was Zane Smith. Who got out front was Zane Smith before the weather came along and basically shortened the race, giving Zane Smith the win. And he picked up right where he left off. He not only won last year's season opener in Daytona, he closed the season with, I think he also won the truck race and the truck race finale. You can hear, you know how fluent my English is. You know how well my brain works. I think he also won the Truck Series finale race and the championship along with that. I know he won the championship with that. And now here he is, picking up right where he left off, essentially. So Zane Smith is honestly, has been and is still the hottest driver on the Truck Series and the Truck roster right now, in the Truck Series roster right now as we speak. And he proved it by picking up where he left off by winning at Daytona. Yes, it was rain shortened, but he got to the front when it counted. I do also kind of feel bad for Corey LaJoie. Corey LaJoie ended up starting up front in that truck race, restarting towards the front in the truck race, right at the tail end, before Zane Smith got the lead. And ever since Zane Smith took the lead away from Corey LaJoie, LaJoie had just slipped right, had just fallen further and further and further back. And unfortunately, he really got screwed out of a good finish. He also got screwed out of a win. He ended up finishing 23rd. So looking at the Truck Series finishing order, Zane Smith, of course, was the winner. Tricon Garage getting a really good result here with Tanner Gray finishing in second. Christian Eckes in his new home with Bill McAnally takes home third. Colby Howard actually was up front throughout a good portion of that race. For CR7 Motorsports, he definitely gave them a really good run by finishing fourth. Grant Enfinger fifth. Ty Majeski in his new ride, but still same team, Thorsport Racing, coming home in the sixth position. Tyler Ankrum seventh. Corey Heim eighth. Matt Crafton ninth. And Chase Elliott driving the 35, who for a driver who I think is not 18 yet. I can't remember who's driving the 35. I'm gonna have to go back and look. You'll see the captions down here. But Chase Elliott driving the 35 for Bill McAnally as well, comes home 10th. So honestly, also another thing, I want to also give a shout out to Travis Pastrana, who I didn't know was in the truck race until I looked at the entry list on the last episode when we made our predictions, when Wyatt and I made predictions for this weekend. And Travis Pastrana ended up finishing 13th in his truck race with Nice Motorsports. So I'd say that's a pretty good deal for him. A really, really good run for somebody like Sammy Smith. But Sammy Smith did take part in this race too. He ended up finishing 14th. But for Travis Pastrana finishing 13th, I'd say that's a really good deal for him. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at the Xfinity Series race. This event pretty much played out the exact same way as it did last year. Even the finish played out the exact same way as it did last year. Of course, with the finish, the racing itself, I mean, it was kind of your average, everyday, typical Xfinity Series race at Daytona in the opening stages of the season, might I add. And we had some comers and goers, I'd say. Sammy Smith ended up spinning out at the end of stage 2. Luckily, was able to save it. Thankfully, he saved it. But I can't really seem to think of anything else that happened from all the highlights that, I watched. Of course, it looks like there probably were a couple of accidents, but man, no. This race definitely was, from what I've seen from highlights, definitely pretty good. But again, the finish played out the exact same way as it did last year, where Austin Hill was leading, John Hunter Nemechek, either Nemechek or Allgaier was battling side by side with Austin Hill. And then there was a wreck on the back straightaway. Sam Mayer, Allgaier ended up, I think, getting into Sam Mayer, who then flipped upside down on the back straightaway, and it comes to, and the win is determined who is out front at the moment of caution. So essentially, it came down to Austin Hill and John Hunter Nemechek. Eventually, Austin Hill gets the nod, and John Hunter Nemechek, who I actually predicted to win Daytona, so close but no cigar, will have to settle for second. Here's my thing on basically the positioning of where Nemechek and also Myatt Snyder and probably a few other drivers were at that moment of caution. They were below. Some of them were below the double yellow line, and I can understand they're trying to avoid a wreck, but it's honestly a good thing that, as much as I don't want to say it, I think it's a good thing that Nemechek didn't advance his position in some way, because with as controversial as the double yellow line rule is, who knows, he probably would have been penalized if Nemechek would have been penalized if he had advanced his position down below the double yellow line. I don't know. But then again, Elliott Sadler won a race down below the double yellow line, but he was also avoiding a wreck, but he still advanced his position. It's, that's just that double yellow line rule is just so confusing. One of these days, NASCAR just needs to get everybody together and say, hey, all right, it's going to be as transparent as you can, be as straightforward as you can, and say, all right, here's what we're going to do. Unless if you are A, avoiding a wreck, B, getting out of the leader's way because you're slower than everybody else, or C, dropping to the back because all the racing that you're around, all the racing that you're in right now is getting very dangerous and you don't like it, so you're just going to dip to the back to play it safe. Unless if you're doing one of those three things, don't go below the double yellow line. I think that's just how it should be. If you blatantly go down below the double yellow line and advance your position, I think it should be a not a 1 lap penalty, a drive-through. If you force somebody below the double yellow line, I think that should be a 1 lap penalty. However, also if the driver that is forced below the double yellow line advances his position, they should also be black flagged. That's my thought. Then again, maybe that could be modified. Modified, or at least, maybe improvised in some way, shape, or form. I don't know. These are just thoughts that just kind of pop into my head when it comes down to the double yellow line rule. But at the end of the day, it's not really my call. It's NASCAR's call. These are just my thoughts, and they can either take them with a grain of salt, or they can just ignore what I'm saying. But looking at these Xfinity Series results, Austin Hill's the winner. John Hunter Nemechek comes home in second. Justin Allgaier third. Parker Retzlaff, who, in one of Jordan Anderson's selfies with his drivers, Parker and Jeff Burton, it looked like Parker didn't want to be at Daytona, but he brought his car home fourth. Myatt Snyder comes home in the fifth position. Riley Herbst sixth. Joe Graff Jr., in one of the many races that he will be driving for Ryan Seek's team, comes home seventh. The man himself, Ryan Seek, takes home eighth. Cole Custer, returning to the Xfinity Series, finishes ninth. And Justin Haley comes home in the 10th position, ironically enough, in car number 10. So, those are just my thoughts, and those are the results from the Xfinity race. And now it's time for the main event, the Daytona 500. This one was very, very entertaining. It was I enjoyed watching this race. Pretty much it was the same theme as it was last year, where the top line would get a run and then eventually slip back. Then the bottom would get a run, then slip back. It was just a game. It was just a dogfight for a lot of positions, top and bottom. Nobody was really getting away from each other. Nobody was pulling away. Nobody was really going in the single file choo-choo train, this very infamous, may I remind you, single file choo-choo train all the way around the top of the racetrack. We didn't really see that. We didn't see that at all. We barely saw it at all, might I just correct myself here. We saw it a little bit towards the end, but there was a couple of big wrecks towards the end. Unfortunately, I mean, Jimmy Johnson, who was returning to the Daytona 500, returning to NASCAR for 5 races, one of which was the Daytona 500, ran a very strong, smart race. I love his enthusiasm. He did not care about stage points. He didn't care about, points in general. All he cared about was bringing the car back in one piece, having fun, and just, if he was in the right position, going for that Daytona 500 win. But unfortunately, he got caught up in a wreck on one of the overtime attempts. I think it was the first overtime attempt. The RFK cars were very, very, very strong. Of course, we had Keselowski, who just went slicing and dicing from top to bottom, back to the top. He went everywhere. It got him to the front, won the first stage, and then towards the end of the race, both Buescher and Keselowski were very tough to deal with. Like, nobody was able to get around them. They even had really good pit stops, and they had the best of the group of which they pitted with. And, some of the other drivers pitted a little bit earlier, so that way they could get out ahead of the drivers that pitted later, of course. But yes, unfortunately, we didn't see a green flag run to the finish. Suarez ended up getting turned off the bumper of Jimmy Johnson, slashing both of his right side tires, which led to the 2 overtime attempts. The last one definitely was, a little frustrating, because we had gotten to the white and we were going to have a run to the checkered flag. Eric Almirola, bumped Travis Pastrana in the back, which, need I remind you, Travis Pastrana was also running a really smart race. Remember, Travis doesn't have a lot of experience in pavement racing. He doesn't have a lot of experience, with plate racing either. This was his first Daytona 500, mind you. This was his first time at Daytona since he raced in the Nationwide Series 10 years ago. And he was in contention for a top 10 finish. Unfortunately, he gets a shove from Eric Almirola going into the corner. That messes Travis Pastrana up. He goes down. He clips Kyle Larson in the right rear, which sends Larson into the wall, and that causes a wreck and cautions out. The race is over. And then we get word that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had made the pass on Joey Logano at the moment of caution, therefore declaring Ricky Stenhouse Jr. the winner of the 2023 Daytona 500. Now, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., I knew would be a contender because of his infamous aggressive super speedway style of racing, super speedway racing style that he always carries, with him, whether it be at Daytona or Talladega or Atlanta. As much as I don't want to count Atlanta as a super speedway, it's not a super speedway. It's just a wannabe super speedway. But no, Stenhouse made the pass, won the Daytona 500, and snaps a 199 race winless streak up until this point. If he lost this race, it would have been 200 and then some, depending on when Stenhouse would have won another one. But I'm really happy for Stenhouse. I'm also really happy for JTT Daughtery Racing. And now they're in the chase. So I'm really looking forward to seeing, how the rest of the year is really going to pan out for us, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and JGT Daughtery Racing. I'm also really excited on how the rest of the year is going to pan out for RFK, since they were so strong at Daytona last night. Remember, as of the night that I'm recording this, I'm just excited to see how the rest of the year is going to play out. Hopefully their performances are a little bit better. Hopefully we can start seeing Keselowski and Chris Buescher a little bit more up at the front. A little bit more. Up at the front a little bit more. Those are the words I meant to say. But in that order, rather. But yeah, let's go ahead, take a look at the finishing results. Of course, Stenhouse, the winner of the Daytona 500. Joey Logano coming home in second. Christopher Bell third. Chris Buescher, another guy, the guy who I was talking about, one of them at least from RFK, comes home fourth. Alex Bowman coming home fifth. AJ Allmendinger, who went a lap down back in stage one, somehow got back on the lead lap, managed to get his way all the way up to third, and then he's in contention for the Daytona 500 win, but he comes home sixth nonetheless. Daniel Suarez seventh, Ryan Blaney eighth, Ross Chastain ninth, and listen to this: Riley Herbst, in his first Cup start, in his first Daytona 500, comes home in the 10th position. Who would have thought that this kid, who a lot of drivers didn't have, a lot of people that I know did not have a lot of faith that he was going to be up at the front, spun out coming into the pits, served a pit road penalty, stayed out of trouble at the very least, and comes home inside of the top 10. I never saw that coming. I did not know that Riley Herbst finished inside of the top 10 until I saw a post on Instagram saying that Riley Herbst finished inside of the top 10. His first career top 10 in the Cup Series. It comes in his first start, and it comes in his first Daytona 500 with Rick Ware Racing. Honestly, I like it. I really am happy for Riley Herbst. Who knows? Maybe we might see Riley Herbst in the Cup Series a little bit more. Either that, or this could be just a one and done deal. Who knows? Really, at this point, we're just gonna have to wait and see. All right, so let's go into what I think is our one and only breaking story that I know of, at least of right now. There's probably going to be more coming out later throughout the week, but there are drivers. So let me backtrack a bit. We all know now that Fontana, the configuration that it's at right now, will no longer be a 2-mile racetrack after this weekend, because once the checker flag waves, once everybody gets out, they will be beginning configurations. They will begin, the process of configuring Auto Club Speedway from a 2-mile racetrack into a short track, and a lot of us were completely against the idea. I for sure am against it because, Fontana as a 2-mile racetrack has produced some really, really good racing, especially with the old pavement where there's grip pretty much everywhere, where you can run top, middle, bottom. You can go restarts. The restarts are always spectacular. It's always great to see how wide everybody goes, especially going into turn one. Some just 5, 6, even 7 wide sometimes. Just seeing that and just seeing the type of racing that Auto Club Speedway as a 2-mile racetrack produces is spectacular to me. I can see why Auto Club Speedway is wanting to configure into a short track, because yes, that's another short track on the schedule, but it also means, of course, it's away from, say, Bristol, Martinsville, Richmond, and now North Wilkesboro, who are all fighting over the same audience down over in that general area, down south. Well, south of me at least. But now there's a short track down here, but but on the flip side of the coin, I just don't like what they're doing. And now drivers are speaking out against this. I already see 2 drivers right here, as I'm looking through this article from Sportsnot.com, saying that drivers are actually pushing against this change that Auto Club Speedway is making after this weekend. So, say Chase Elliott, for instance, says that he enjoys racing at this track, and it's been if I can read this actually for a minute. Chase Elliott said he enjoys going to the racetrack, and that it has been a really weird deal. Elliott's confused about this. Confused about the plan, as normally things run smoothly. Quotes, "It's kind of odd." Ross Chastain says, let's see. Ross Chastain reflects on Fontana. The next gen car saved his life during a wreck in practice. Ryan Blaney doesn't like this. He was very, it looks like it says he was very adamant about his desire for the racetrack to stay the same. But yeah, there's a lot of drivers that say they don't want this track to change into a half-mile racetrack. But Suarez, I think, even agrees. Suarez, I think, is another driver that is thinking the same thing. There's just a lot of them. There's a lot of drivers that don't want to see this. And I'm really hoping NASCAR takes notes. I'm really hoping NASCAR or Auto Club Speedway also takes notes and says, you know what? The drivers really love racing at this configuration. The drivers, really, the fans love seeing the type of racing that is being produced. That's what I meant to say. So let's just leave it how it is. If anything, eventually, if they decide to do this, if they ever decide to do this, which, let's face it, Auto Club Speedway is not going to do that. If they do, I'll actually be surprised. Is the inevitable's gonna happen? Eventually, they might have to repave the track because, I mean, you don't want the track coming up and hitting another car and just having another driver hit the piece of asphalt that's coming up. You don't want potholes to form eventually. You just, I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of things that you don't want to happen to old pavement on a racetrack that could eventually happen. So, I mean, that's just my thing. So, I mean, take it for how you want, I guess. But nonetheless, that's just me. That's just me when it comes down to, what Fontana might have to do in order to, just make sure the racetrack is still in good shape. I mean, which the track, it's still in good shape. It's just, I'm fearing for later on down the road, should Auto Club Speedway decide to keep the racetrack as it is. That's just me, though. But, all right, so speaking of Fontana, why don't we go ahead? Let's review the weekend, or preview Fontana, which I'm thinking it's probably just going to come out the same way as it did before. Good racing all around, typical Fontana style racing. That's just pretty much how it's going to be. I don't know. It's just this weekend is going to be it's still going to be really fun to watch. It's the second race of the season. Still the second race of the season, and looking forward to it. So, now it's time to move on into our predictions for Fontana. Of course, it's the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series here. I think Trucks is off this weekend. Trucks is off. Yep. Trucks are off this weekend. So it's just Xfinity and Cup. And since it's just me, I'll go ahead and I'll make my predictions. So, of course, driver to win. Of course, it's pretty obvious. They're just the driver who goes on to win. I didn't really need to explain it, but I already did. Driver to stay away from. The driver that hasn't really been doing well the last couple of weeks, or we're just coming up to a track where they don't perform well at. The dark horse is the exact opposite. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get on down to our predictions with the Xfinity Series. For my driver to win in Xfinity, I'm going to say, man, this is kind of tough, but I'm going to say in his return to the Xfinity Series, he's going to pick up right where he left off at Fontana in the Xfinity Series. Cole Custer is going to be my driver to win. My driver to stay away from, quite personally to me, hate to put him in this boat. It's still very early in the season, but I still hate to put him in this boat. But Brandon Jones is going to be my driver to stay away from. He runs good. I mean, he's a really talented driver. However, there's just things that really don't necessarily go his way. And, I mean, even last year, he ended up crashing in the barrels. So, he's unfortunately going to be my driver to stay away from. Dark horse. My dark horse, I'm going to go with Chandler Smith on this one. Chandler always shows a lot of speed. I mean, even he showed this in the Truck Series. He showed this a couple times when he raced in the Xfinity Series on a partial schedule before going full-time. So, I'm really excited to see how Chandler does. I think this is his first time going to Fontana, if I'm correct. So, this is definitely going to be interesting to watch him. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that Xfinity race comes out. But now it's time to get over to the Cup Series. Now, who do I think is going to be a driver to win? This is probably going to be really tough. I could say Kyle Larson again, but then again, at the same time, you never know. Somebody else could come out on top. Driver to win, might be a little bit biased. And again, it might be just how performance-wise. I don't know. And it could be anything, but I'm going to say Joey Logano is going to be my driver to win. I mean, of course, last year, he showed a lot of speed. He was up at the front for a good portion of the race, especially towards the end. So I'm going to look at him as a driver to win. My driver to stay away from, probably going to say, I think I might say, man, even for me, this is still a really tough decision. And I don't know why. Oh, man. I think I might say Austin Dillon is going to be my driver to stay away from for this one. I don't know. I just kind of have a feeling that he might not have a good result. I think he might mess up on a pit stop. He might wreck. He might blow a tire. Wreck, essentially. So we'll just wait and see what happens there. But my dark horse is going to be... I had it and then I lost it. Oh, that was who was going to be my dark horse. I want to say Kyle Busch is going to be my dark horse for this one. If you remember last year, when Tyler Reddick was driving the 8 at the time, he had a lot of speed. That 8 car had a lot of speed. It dominated a lot of the race. I'm thinking that we might see the same thing. We could see the same thing for Kyle Busch this year driving the 8 car. So, got a lot of things looking forward to this year, or really for this year, of course. We kind of started out with, in my opinion, a banger of a Daytona 500, minus the overtime attempts that kind of tainted what would have been what was a and still is a really spectacular race. I personally still, I mean, it doesn't carry the same caliber as a crown jewel all that much anymore. Overtime's kind of tainted it a little bit, but that's just my opinion. But I mean, I still look forward to the race, in my opinion, also as well. But as far as Fontana is concerned, this first non-plate race of the season, let's just go to Fontana. Let's kick ass and take some names. So that's pretty much going to do it for this one. Thank you guys a lot for watching. I'm really hoping that we have Wyatt and Nathan back in here for next week. So if you guys like this, be sure to give it a like. If you haven't considered subscribing yet, recommend you do so to keep up with some fine content coming out in the near future. Also, be sure to follow if you are. That's what I was going to say. If you're listening to this on Spotify, be sure to hit that green follow button so that way you don't miss a future audio replay that should be coming out at 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Thursday mornings. I still need to make that a chore. Every time after I finish a stream, I just go in, download the audio replay, upload it on the platform that pushes the episodes out to Spotify. I need to do that. But anyways, take care, guys. Have yourselves a good night, and I will see you on the next one.